Today, we're going to unpack the architecture of American power by focusing on one really specific question. Why did one 19th century college student's obsession lead him to build a 200-year-old machine that has actively shaped the modern world?
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with the German inspiration, move on to founding the Brotherhood, and then take a look inside the initiation. After that, we'll see how this whole thing acts as a machine for power. And finally, we'll wrap up with guarding the secrets. I promise to connect William Huntington Russell's historical motivations directly to the staggering modern power structures we see today. Let's get right into it.
All right, Section 1, the German inspiration, a blueprint. Okay, let's dive into this by jumping all the way back to 1832. A wealthy Yale sophomore named William Huntington Russell has just gotten back from this totally transformative year abroad in Germany. And while he was visiting the University of Berlin, he encountered something that just completely rewired his worldview. They were called the Burschenschaften. Now, these weren't your typical college drinking clubs, no. They were highly secretive student societies that were actually deeply involved in fomenting nationalist movements to unify Germany. Russell is watching these students wield genuine, nation-building political influence from the shadows, and he came back to Connecticut absolutely obsessed. He decided right then and there that he needed to build exactly this kind of engine in America.
Think about it. What does a normal college kid in the 1830s, or even today, really, want? They're looking for a social fraternity. They want a network for parties, a bit of camaraderie, and maybe some post-graduation networking. But Russell? He wasn't interested in a fraternity at all. As our source material highlights, he was after a brotherhood, a conspiracy. He was intentionally trying to replicate a world-shaping political machine right in the very heart of Yale.
Moving right along, Section 2, founding the Brotherhood, skulls emerge. So, to make this grand vision a reality, Russell recruited a classmate named Alphonso Taft. Fun fact, Taft was a guy from Cincinnati whose own son would actually go on to become president of the United States. Together they established what they initially called the Eulophologian Club, which was named after the fictional goddess of eloquence. But that name didn't really stick. What did stick, though, was their symbol, the skull and crossbones. They adopted the death's head of piracy and poison. It was a super potent visual drawn directly from those German secret societies Russell had studied, all mixed together with the Masonic traditions that his own wealthy family had practiced for generations.
But the order wasn't just a club with a scary logo. It was built on a really specific ideological foundation. Why did Russell build it this way? Well, it's a blend of American exceptionalism, social Darwinism, and this intense messianic self-regard. Russell designed the group to instill the belief that its members are literally a natural aristocracy, filtered through America's most selective university and then its most selective secret society. These guys are taught that their right to govern the masses is simply self-evident. They genuinely believe they are destined to rule.
Which brings us to Section 3, inside the initiation, Tap Night.
So, how is this intense ideology actually instilled in a bunch of college kids? Every spring, on a Thursday evening known as Tap Night, the recruitment cycle starts. Step 1. Exactly 15 juniors are selected by the outgoing senior class. Step 2. The chosen are summoned to the windowless tomb. They aren't told why, and if they refuse, they risk being completely shunned by the Yale elite. Step 3. Once they're inside, the initiation is intensely theatrical. New members are stripped of their old identities and handed brand new names. And Step 4, this is where it gets wild. In a terrifying, absurd psychological breakdown, they are made to lie in coffins and recount their deepest shames, including their entire sexual histories, to the group. So the crucial point is what happens during this highly vulnerable state. The message is drilled in. The order is now your family, your church, and your country. Loyalty to the group supersedes absolutely all other bonds. This psychological crucible is exactly how Russell's original vision comes to life. The initiation completely breaks down the individual and their earthly ties, replacing them with absolute, lifelong loyalty to the order. When they emerge from those coffins, they are forever Bonesmen.
Naturally, because of this intense wall of secrecy, the tomb has been the subject of some absolutely wild speculation. British economist Anthony Sutton studied the group heavily in the 1980s and surfaced several bizarre claims from his research. He alleged they engage in mock human sacrifice and that they actually keep stolen skulls on display. The most famous rumor? The skull of Apache leader Geronimo, which was allegedly dug up and stolen by Bonesman Prescott Bush in 1918. Sutton also pointed to a massive, hidden network of private trusts and offshore accounts. Now, Yale officially denies everything. And the Bonesmen themselves? They refuse to discuss it. Period. Let's look at the real-world impact. Section 4, a machine for power, influence.
We can debate the rumors of what happens inside the tomb all day, but we absolutely cannot debate the staggering real-world results that come out of it. And this brilliantly illustrates the scale of what we're talking about. In the political sphere, you've got 3 U.S. presidents, William Howard Taft, George H.W. Bush, and George W. Bush. In the corporate world, you have the founders of massive companies like Time Magazine and FedEx. And when it comes to global events, Bonesmen were the architects of the Manhattan Project, the planners of the Bay of Pigs, the negotiators of the Treaty of Versailles, and the designers of the Cold War. This isn't just a coincidence. This is Russell's 1832 machine working exactly as designed.
I want you to just let this number sink in for a second. 2. In the 2004 United States presidential election, out of a country of hundreds of millions of people, the American public was presented with exactly 2 major candidates: George W. Bush and John Kerry. Both men were Bonesmen. Both men were sworn to the exact same secret oath. When they were asked about this bizarre coincidence on national television, Kerry just laughed and changed the subject, while Bush joked that it was a secret he couldn't discuss. No way, right?
To really understand this multi-generational grip, just look at the Bush family. You have Prescott Bush from the class of 1917, a Wall Street banker and senator. Researchers like Anthony Sutton claim he actually helped finance the Nazi regime prior to World War II. Then his son, George H.W. Bush, class of 1948, becomes CIA director and later president. Then his son, George W. Bush, class of 1968, becomes president and initiates the Iraq War, an action critically driven by intelligence pushed by yet another Bonesman, Donald Rumsfeld. The sources point to this network directly and continuously shaping global foreign policy, wars, and intelligence across generations.
But remember, it's not just a social network. It is a highly capitalized machine for concentrating power. The Order's alumni trust is called the Russell Trust Association. It controls hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate and investments. You've got Bonesmen at Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and the Federal Reserve, ensuring that capital just keeps growing. The practical application of this is stunning. Think about it. When a Bonesman needs a top-tier job, a massive loan, a political pardon, or even backing for a war, he doesn't send out a resume. He makes a phone call to a man he once lay beside in a coffin.
So, how do they keep all this quiet? Section 5. Guarding the secrets. Wall silence.
To maintain this incredible level of power, the Order protects itself fiercely from any public scrutiny. Just look at the history of their leaks. In 1832, they're founded. In 1873, the New York Herald publishes a major expose revealing their rituals. And how did the Bonesmen respond? They bought the newspaper and literally shut it down. Poof, gone. Fast forward to 1977, a group of students breaks into the tomb, and Esquire magazine actually publishes photos of the skulls and coffins. The Bonesmen unleashed a massive lawsuit, the magazine settled, and those photographs essentially vanished. Their immense wealth ensures their wall of silence remains completely intact.
Which brings us right back to the present day, to that windowless brownstone at 64 High Street in New Haven. The cycle continues exactly as William Huntington Russell designed it way back in 1832. Inside, the current senior class is preparing. They do not announce their criteria. They do not explain their choices to the public. They simply tap the next 15 juniors on the shoulder. And those chosen follow them into the dark, stepping into a brotherhood that demands everything, but in return hands over the keys to the kingdom.
So what does this all mean for us? We are left standing on the outside, looking at a building without windows, which leaves us with this final, profound question to consider. As we look at the trajectory of history, are the presidents, the vast wealth, and the foreign wars of the nation truly the messy product of a functioning democracy? Or are we simply witnessing the latest initiations of a 200-year-old club that has never, ever lost its grip on power? Thank you for joining me for